So what you're going to get out of this talk, I don't really know you guys. We'll get to that in a second. But what I can promise you'll get out of this, no matter who you are, is you'll know a bit about backend databases and how to add a simple one to your app. And you'll even have a working example that you've played with that you feel comfortable building on top of for this hackathon or for something later. And if we have time, we can talk about authentication, creating users, logging them in, permissions, things like that. That has to do with reducers, which is a little more complicated. I don't know if we'll get to it. And we can talk about Firebase a bit because they're also backend database as a service thing. I should say, if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll periodically go back and I guess check the chat for if there are questions. Okay, who am I? I'm Steve. I texted you guys the link so you can click on my links. This is my personal website, my Twitter, fairly active there. I love programming languages and developer tools. That's kind of my thing. I made this Future of Coding podcast and Slack community around what's the future of programming. These are some of the places I worked. I do some angel investing. And yeah, after this, I encourage you to DM me if any of these things sound interesting and I could be helpful at all. All right, so I would love to get some sense of who everyone who's here is so I can better tailor this talk. Hopefully you guys are vaguely who I expect you to be, so this talk is good. Otherwise, that would be bad. So maybe I could do like a poll, like a Q&A. I guess let's just start with the chat and see if you guys reply. Is anyone here new to coding? Like, could I just get here?
Hey, Steve, sorry to interrupt you. If you switch over to the session tab instead of event tab, there you go. You'll see it's like session specific. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
And no, that's perfect. Here, can I delete this from the event? No, I don't see how. All right, that's fine. Awesome. Session tab, chat. Awesome, cool. Can you guys in the chat just go ahead and say if you're new to coding and feel comfortable, let me know. Otherwise, I'll assume everyone here is a programmer. Great. I would love to hear about this. Oh, thanks, Jose. That is awesome. Yeah, what languages and frameworks you guys are using. If you want to tell me about your project, that would be really helpful. This question is really key, and they're related. If you already have started a project and you're already using certain frameworks, this would help me tailor the talk to what you're doing. Web app with React, nice. That is what I want to hear because that is what I've kind of geared this talk around. But I have alternatives for people who aren't interested in React. All right, cool. Well, I'll let you guys keep pasting things in there as I continue. I appreciate you guys all doing that. Okay. So I mentioned that I'm into developer tools and programming languages. I have been working for the last 5 months on this new backend as a service for React.js. I'm trying to make it the fastest and easiest way to add a backend and database to your app. That's why I say you can do it in 3 lines. It's totally made by me, which is good in the fact that if you have any problems or questions, I'm your guy. There's nowhere else to go, unlike any other tool out there. But the downside is it's just made by me, so there might be bugs, and it's very new software. And then also, this is good and bad. It works best with React. If you're not using React, this talk might not be as relevant for the project you're currently working on, but it could be useful for the next one. And I'll talk a bit towards the end about alternatives to my tool to compose. Okay, that's enough about context. Let's just get started programming. That's the fun stuff. So go ahead and click on this link or just type in compose.run in your browser and you'll get taken to the compose run client. And this is the thing that you have to install. And this is also where all the documentations are. So I did a pretty good job with the docs, I think. And after this talk, you could just go through the guide and learn a lot more than I cover in this talk. And yeah, API, and you can. The reason it's all on one page is so you can Control F for stuff. Okay, so you could, if you already have a project, you could just npm install in your project and get going and just start integrating into your project. But I think for the purposes of this workshop, we could all just stay together in Code Sandbox. It's just the easiest. So just click this link, and here we are. We're in Code Sandbox. It should look something like this. If you guys, oh, look at that. Someone knows how to click a button. So yeah, go ahead and click the button and you'll see what happens. We're all synced on this button. That is the point of Compose. You have a cloud database that's synced. And if you are familiar with React or not, you will notice that this whole thing is just 29 lines of code. And the vast majority of it is normal React code. The only part that's related to Compose is this bit. This bit you really should not pay attention to, so I'll just comment that out for now. This is really the only Compose bit, and we'll talk about that in a second. I guess, yeah, we'll come back to this. This is all normal React, and I'll just, for those of you who aren't familiar with React, this is how we're putting the count on the screen inside the button, and then this is the buttons on click handler, which is updating the count to whatever count was plus 1. So if you wanted, I don't know if anyone's done this yet, but you guys can play around with it. Any of you can do this. So I just changed it to plus 10. So now you should all see that the count is going up by 10 when I click, not when you click, because, you know, it's just in my code it's changed. So anyone can do something nasty here, and we're all in the shared variable. So that's that. Okay, so now we'll talk about the Compose bit up here. So if you are familiar with React, you may be familiar with the use state hook. So it looks like this. I put in a comment because it looks so similar to what we have that it would cause an error. So use count set count equals use state 0. So that's a normal way to have a variable in React inside a React component. The problem, or not the problem, but the characteristics of use state is that it's local. So when I click here and now you all see 250, that wouldn't be the case with regular old use state. It's just local to your computer. You refresh the screen, it's back to 0. 0 is the initial value. Use cloud state is almost exactly the same. You could see we have here, this is get and this is set. Here we have it just the same. The difference is, and here we also even have the initial value, just like 0. The difference is name. And the reason I need a name as like your cloud provider, because I made this, so I'm your cloud provider. I need a name because I need to keep this piece of state separate from all the other pieces of state. So like the reason you don't need that here is because the variable itself is the name, but this is more of like a local thing. I need a global cloud name. So that's name. All right, so now let's play a bit with name and initial value. You guys can all play with, so right now we're all synced because we're all on example/count, but now I'm gonna ask you all to fork off into your own names. And so you can like, I'll put Stevie because that's a name I go by, and you guys can put your own name. You can put some like arbitrary characters here. What should happen, this is, I've seen this bug before, it's a code sandbox bug. What should happen is that the initial state should be set to 0. So let me refresh the page, there we go. I don't really recommend code sandbox too much because it has bugs like this. But so anyways, I created a new name. I have a new, so the initial state comes into play here, and now I can keep going. Let's say, that's this step. Now let's go to this step. I think I have the line number slightly off. Doesn't matter. I'm walking it through with you guys. I want the initial state to start at a lot of 9s. So it's not here. I don't see the 9s. I can refresh the page. There are no 9s, and you guys should all be doing this on your own thing. Does anyone here? I'll check in the chat. Does anyone have a guess as to why I don't see the 9s here, and like how I could make this initial state come into play? I'll check the chat. I don't know if you guys are going to be into answering questions. I'll wait 10 seconds. Just a little behind. Okay. Maybe you're behind following me. We have to recompile something. That's a good guess. Well, so JavaScript, there's no compilation, but maybe you're like saying I need to reevaluate something. So that's a good guess. So if I just refresh the page, no, it's still 999. But it's pretty close to what I need to do. Like I need to tell Compose that like something needs to be reset. So the answer is that once you've set an initial state, we've been taught, if you're an app programmer, that initial means like when the page is loaded, or when this component loads. So the 0 will be 0 when the component loads, but if you load the component a bunch of times, it'll be reset to 0. But in a cloud context, initial state only happens one time ever in the life of this name. So this name can never, ever come to 99999 because it's already 110. So if I want 99999 to take effect somewhere, I need to create a new name. Just add some more characters and refresh the page. And now we get the 99999. And we still go up by 10, if you remember, because I did this in my local code sandbox. I haven't saved this, and you guys aren't on my local code sandbox. You all have your own. We're not synced up. I'm not going to see you guys popping up my number unless some of you are really fast at typing and can type this exact string into your thing. But that's, anyways, that's how names and initial state work in Compose. And yeah, so it's very similar to set state, use state, the React took, but it's designed around cloud. So you almost think of it like you get cloud for free. So if you're already using React, like I saw at least one of you are, and there's a part, like one piece of state that you want to be a cloud piece of state, Compose is the easiest way. You'll notice, or maybe you didn't notice, but you didn't have to sign up for an account for Compose to get Compose to work. You didn't have to create a new project, add people to the project. It's not AWS, it's not Firebase. It's I want to really feel like it's just a React primitive, just like this. You just npm install it and you start using it, and I give you free storage and syncing up to a limit. Obviously, I haven't figured out pricing yet. It's just a new tool, but totally fine for your hackathon. Just go ahead and use this variable in the sky in your React app. Okay, I'll pause for questions for a good 20 seconds, let's say. I don't know, maybe that's too long. You know what? I'm not going to pause for questions. You guys throw in your questions when you have them, and I'll keep going, and I'll check periodically. Okay, so debugging. So if you're going to use this in your app, debugging is like really important. I don't know if we should, yeah, I guess we could do this real quick. Might as well. So here, let me go back to examples count. So I'm on the same name as every of all the rest of you. You see how this 999 is ignored? That's because we're past initial. Like, we're never going to get back to initial. So this is always going to be ignored by Compose for this name. But I really want it to be 999 right now. And so the way I would do that is set the state. So you can do this outside of a React component. You can just do this anywhere. Globalify pollutes the global name space with all these names. So we could just import this explicitly from Compose, not use Globalify. But I figured for beginners, Globalify is nice, so you don't have to worry about importing stuff. Now, the real reason to use Globalify is so that you can use all these functions in the console. I'm remembering that. That's why I did that. So, so now you can see I've set all of your guys' state to this because I can just set it to whatever I want, whenever I want. You guys can all do that too. And if any of you are clever, you might set it to something nefarious. Go for it. I will see how devious you guys are. This is, so yeah, so now I'm directing us to these lines. I really have the line numbers wrong. These lines are what I had you comment out before. This is what tries to prevent shenanigans. It's not a very great way to do it, but I'll show you what happens. If I put in like hi here, you see that flicker with 0. Maybe you don't see it on my screen because it's a screen share, but maybe you see it on your screen. I set it to hi and then it sets it to 0. And the reason it goes back to 0 is because I have this shenanigan protecting thing in here. I'm just, on every render, I'm just checking if it's not a number and if it's not null, and then setting it to 0 to just have a reasonable default, because it really shouldn't be a string. That wouldn't make sense to add to a string. So this is really unprotected, is basically what I'm getting at with this example and this whole discussion. For the purposes of a hackathon, I think that's totally fine. Maybe it's even great. You guys just have this cloud variable in the sky, and if you're careful, you can just set it to whatever you want. If you actually have an app with users, maybe for the first 10 or 20 users, this is fine, but if you have a nefarious user, this is not good. Later in this talk, when we get to this reducer section, I'll show you how to handle that properly. But for the purpose of the hackathon, the reason I haven't focused on reducers too much in this talk is because you guys are at a hackathon. the purposes of a hackathon, this is enough. Okay, great. So we did set state. Now let's talk about what if you wanted to get state or read state. One way is you could like print it to the console. I'm not going to do that because there's a better way. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but if you we have 80, we all have 80 if you're on example/count, and if you refresh the page, you see how maybe one of you reset it, but you see it should just why is it going back to 0? Oh, this is why it's going back to 0, because I'm constantly setting it to high. Okay, so remove the high. Cool. Now if I refresh the page, you see how it instantly loads at 50? There's no flicker. So in Compose, while things are loading, you get null. So count would be null if there was, someone did something. Someone's trying to set it to a string. I like it. The reason there's no flicker is because I'm saving the last state I knew about in local storage and using that as a default. And so it happens to be, like, I don't have a proper dashboard for Compose for you guys. But what I do have is local storage. So like, here's all of the states I've ever saved to Compose and their value. So if I want to know about examples count, you could just put it on the screen like I've done. Or you could see right here that it's 32. Oh, no. Is that right? Yeah, 32. Anyways, if you have too many Compose states in your local storage, you could just delete them all and then refresh the page. My screen is not big enough to do all these things at the same time. Refresh the page. And then you saw how it loaded there because it wasn't in local storage. Now go to here and you see that we have the one state we care about. So that's a good debugging tool. Just application and then find this is in an iframe. That's why it's nested underneath there. Okay, cool. That's debugging. Let me check for questions. No questions. Okay, users and logging in. This is also really easy. If you want to have a user in your app, Compose supports Magic Link login. You just type this into your wherever it is that you want, like whenever it is that you want to send them the link to click on it to get logged in, and you're done. Shockingly easy. So let's go ahead and do that in the console. I wouldn't recommend doing it here in the in your code, because Code Sandbox like runs in every save, and it might just send you a lot of emails. So do this in the console. So now you guys all know my email. Don't tell anyone. Okay, so you put your name in here, your email address in here, and then app name is interesting. Like, why do I need this? You'll see that in a second. So I'm gonna put CruzHacks. You guys put whatever you want, and then go for it. Enter. All right. So now go to your email. Don't read my email, guys. Okay, cool. So log in to CruzHacks. Now you see why I needed the app name, because I'm like telling your users to log into your app. So unless you tell me what it's called, I'm not going to know. I don't need to know that for pieces of state. Pieces of state are just free floating variables. I don't need to know what apps they're attached to. But for this one purpose, I need to know. So your users know what app they're logging into. All right, click the login button. I throw the Compose token up in there, and voila, you're logged in. To know that you're logged in, to like prove it to yourself, you can go back to application, local storage, and then see in the Compose cache, I have the user. So I have I'll put your ID and your username. And that's it. So Compose knows that I'm logged in now. I'm not doing anything with that information, obviously. The hook to do something with it is the use user hook. So I'll go ahead and just use that real quick. Const user equals use user. It might as well just import it. So Code Sandbox doesn't complain. And then let's see, can I just JSON.stringify user. Cool. So again, you guys are going to see my email address. So if nobody's logged in, this will just be null. So there's a logout command I could call. You know, why don't I just do it? Logout. Now if I refresh the page, it's null. Awesome. Okay, moving along. How long is this workshop? 45 minutes? Cool. We have plenty of time. Things do get a little more complicated now because we're talking about reducers, and reducers are notoriously complicated. But on the bright side, like I've said before, you don't need reducers for a hackathon. You just need use state. Reducers are more for when you need write protection, or when you want to deal with complicated state. So you see here how like set count is count plus 10. If you're like, you know what, I don't want to have like sprinkled mutations throughout my code. If you're into functional programming and you want more sanity, I guess you could say, put all the writes in one place, a reducer could help. So you might want to use a reducer in this hackathon even, but you don't have to. You could just use state. Okay, so for those of you who know functional programming and know reduce or fold, that's what I'm talking about. Or if you use Redux with React, you know what I'm talking about. You can zone out for 20 seconds. For those of you who don't, I will start with an analogy. A reducer is like a clerk. So imagine going to a bureaucracy, like to get your license plate. And the clerk is standing there, and you hand the clerk a form, and the clerk stamps the form, like rejected or accepted, and then they take the form. That's what a reducer does. It accepts what we call an action. It's usually a JavaScript object, but it could be any value. And then it decides what to do, how to mutate the state based on that action. So to get a little more technical, a reducer is a function of two inputs. The first input is the current value of the state, and the second input is the action. The action is the form that you submit to this clerk. And the clerk runs this function. It does what it wants to based on what the action is and what the current value of the state is. And then it returns either the same state, it like rejects your action, like maybe it will give you an error back. And then, so you see, it kind of returns two things, which is a little bit awkward, but the reason it needs to return two things is it needs to tell the person who submitted the action, like, here's the error, or no, success. And then it also needs to mutate the state itself and return a new version of the state. So that's at a high level what a reducer is. Questions? No questions. Please, yeah, reducers are notoriously confusing, so I expect there to be questions. There's enough. I didn't expect there to be enough time really to write. I expected more questions, but it looks like we have enough time to go ahead and write a reducer together. So let's go ahead and do that here. I'm just, no, fork, that doesn't sound right. I'll just go ahead and do it in the same example. Let me clean things up a bit, and then we'll get going. So I'm no longer going to use cloud state. I'm going to use cloud reducer. Awesome. And I don't need this. And I don't need any of this. Okay, I'll keep the same count example basically. Here, let me just comment out those things. I'll keep the same count example and just change it to using a reducer and make it authenticated or like more structured, more gated. Okay, so const count, and then dispatch count. Instead of set state or set count, we call it dispatch count action. Okay, equals use cloud reducer, and then there are three parameters. So the first one is name, which you're used to. So I'll call this CruzHacks, whatever, CruzHacks reducer. And then initial state is 0, and then the reducer itself, it accepts, these are the TypeScript type helpers, previous state, the action, and that's all we need for right now. Awesome. Cool. And then let's just say return previous state. I guess that'll be it. So it just ignores every action and just returns the previous state. All right. Uncomment this. Okay. What I want it to do instead is dispatch count action. And I'll have a dispatch count action with nothing. Okay, cool. So we click it, nothing happens. Now let's just go ahead and say we just make the increment right here. We ignore the action. The action is null anyways, but we still just increase by 1 every time. Huzzah! That is the world's simplest reducer. So you'll notice what we've done is we no longer set the value to what it was plus 1 over here. We're doing that here in the reducer. And now here's where maybe your mind will be blown. This reducer function is run on my servers. This is not run on your computer. It's not run locally. So anything inside here is run on my computers. And if you change it, like instantly, that was just deployed to my servers instantly. So if you've ever tried deploying a Lambda function or any code to run on a server, your brain should be a little bit blown. Nobody deploys functions like this in milliseconds. But of course, I'm not actually deploying them. I'm not doing it in a proper way. I'm just grabbing this function, calling toString on it, throwing it in a WebSocket, and then putting it on my server in a database. And then when you click this, through WebSockets, I pull your function out of the database and run it on my server. So the reason I say that is if you do things in here that aren't really simple, things are not going to work. So let me see. Like I could say const a equals 1, and I could say previous state plus a. That is not going to work. I'm not doing smart enough things to know that I have to close over this a and throw the 1 into there. So what should happen, it's a little bit, so anyways, there's an error. I'm not getting the error because this is happening on the server. To be honest, I should be getting this error because I have it set up such that the way I want it to work, this might be a bug or something is going a little bit weird, but the way I want it to work is I want this error to be in your console. Even though this error is happening on my servers, I want to stream the errors to your console. What usually fixes this when this doesn't work is just to log in, like create a developer account. So if you were following along and you logged yourself in before, you already had created a developer account. If you logged yourself out, you logged yourself out of your developer account. So in Compose, there's no distinction between a user and a developer. They're the same account. So let's go ahead and do that again. Let me just log myself in, and then I should be getting the errors. Cool. All right. So even though it opened in this new tab, it still should log me in this tab as well. But I can refresh the page just in case. Okay, so now let me make sure. Okay, cool. So another thing to know about reducers is that I own this reducer. So if you type this name into your reducer and try and change this to something else, it won't work. I own the reducer because I'm logged in and I use this name. And so Compose is like, you're the first person who's logged in who uses this name. You own it for forever, this name. And so that's what really protects, from a writing perspective, cloud state. Okay, so I own it. Compose knows I own it. Let's throw an error in here and click on it. Huzzah! Look at that. CruzHacks2022, that's the name of my reducer. And this reference error, A is not defined. This happened on a server, and I streamed it to your local browser. Again, the whole point of Compose is to just add this cloud value to regular old React reducers. So the way you would normally do it in React is you'd be like, all this would be the same, except there'd just be the word cloud wouldn't be here basically, and you wouldn't need to give me a name in here. But a regular old React reducer has an initial state and it has a reducer, and that's it. It's the same idea. Okay, so we have a reducer. We're logged in. We're getting error messages. You guys have been warned about how janky reducers are from a perspective of you have to be delicate with them. Like you can't define things outside and use them inside. That should work again. Great. Okay, so now let's talk a bit about how to properly use a reducer. So I'll just skip right to how I use them. So create an object, add a type parameter. Type is just just so you know, it's not a special keyword. I'll call it kind. You can call it whatever you want, and then give it a name. And so then you could say in here, if action.kind. I'll change this back to type because I prefer that. If action.type equals increment, then do the increment thing. And the reason I pass it as an object instead of a string is so that you can add a by parameter and say increment by 1. And so you can do action.increment by. So now it'll increment by however much you put in here. And so now this is unprotected. Like any user can read your code and dispatch an account action by however much they want. So you're leaving that open if you do it this way. They can only increase the number, which is good. They can't set it to a string, which is good, but they can increase by however much they want. If you only want them to be able to increase it by a set amount, then don't let them put in that number. Just hard code it yourself on my servers, which you're writing inside the reducer. Cool. Any questions? We just covered a lot of stuff. Reducers are complicated. Let's check. Oh, great. Is there a reason to use reducer instead of cloud state that we're using before? That I talked a bit about that already. Is there someone who has been listening that wants to help them out? Or her? I don't know. Sorry. Ashana. I don't know. I shouldn't have gendered anybody. Anyone want to help them out? So there are a couple of reasons. I was saying before, you may not have been here. What I was saying before is that for the purposes of this hackathon, I would encourage you to just stick to use cloud state. Unless you already know what reducers are and it looks better to you, go for it. But for the purpose of this hackathon, just stick to cloud state. The main reason to use a reducer is to protect your state. So the way we had it before with use cloud state, any of you, and I think maybe some of you even tried, set the state to like a string or a number or something that it shouldn't have been. With a reducer, you can protect it. The only way a state can ever change is inside a reducer, and the only one who could write a reducer code is you, the person who created the reducer for this name. So reducer is all about protection for when you have real users, unlike at a hackathon where it's just you and nobody is adversarial. So great question. Awesome, you got it. Cool. So I thought now could be a good time to make a simple chat app, but let me come back to this. Let me talk about alternatives for those of you who don't want to use React or don't know React and aren't comfortable with it. So the first thing I'll say is you can use Compose without React. If Compose, even without React, it's still the simplest cloud variable in existence. All you have to do is npm install it, and then you could call set cloud state wherever the hell you want and get cloud state wherever the hell you want. And you just have a getter and setter, a key value store in the sky for free. It is the simplest. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to sign up for it. It just works. So even if you're not using React, you could still use Compose. If you really don't want to use React and you want something more legit, like that's been around for 10 years now, I think, Firebase is the thing. I'm a big user of Firebase. I'm a big fan. You could even say that Compose is inspired by Firebase. They invented what is called backend as a service, and that's what Compose is, backend as a service. They're the pros. I find their product to be like a little bit neglected by Google and slow. And sorry, the database isn't slow, but using this website is slow. Like it's just kind of enterprising now. You go in here, you have to create a new project, you have to create a name for it. It's, you're using Google Cloud. You have to turn on Google Analytics. I don't know. It's fine. Google's a great company. I love Google products, and I love Firebase. So if you want something that also feels like a key value store in the sky, and it works with every framework under the sun, including none, Firebase is your thing. I recommend it. If you want something newer, the new kid on the block is called Supabase. They just raised $30 million, and they're the new hotness. I think they have a lot of users. So Firebase, Supabase is Postgres. So if you've never used Postgres and you're at a hackathon and you want something, don't use Supabase because you need to know Postgres and SQL in order to use Supabase. What's nice about Compose and Firebase is that they are JavaScript JSON based. They're just JSON key value stores like Mongo. So you just take the JavaScript objects that you're dealing with on the front end, and then boom, you persist them. Move on with your life. That's what I recommend for hackathons. If you want even more alternatives, I've made a bit of a study of the space because I'm starting one myself. So you can click on these tweets. I have like a serverless database backend aggregator thread of threads. So this is all the different backend as a services. You see Firebase is here, Supabase is here. There are a bunch of other things out there that are a lot like Firebase and Supabase. And then if you're into GraphQL, there are ones that are specifically designed around GraphQL. Hasura, Orfana, one of these companies just raised like $1 billion valuation. There's Prisma that's also very popular, but it's less of a whole backend as a service. But hopefully I've shown you that Compose is like the easiest to use of all of these. You could play with them all, but I play with them all, and none of them, like all of them, you have to create an account before you can like save state, for example. Compose, you don't have to do that. But they all have like way more advanced features than Compose, and they have like more than one person working there. So they're better, but for the purposes of a hackathon, I think I have your back pretty well. Okay, we still have some time. Let me check for questions. Nope. All right, let's make a little chat app. I'll chat with all of you guys. So I'm not gonna, I already have this reducer set up. It's kind of nice. Should I stick with it or should I go back to use state? I've been really selling you guys on use state, so I'll go back to use state. Just I'm doing all this work. Yeah, don't feel like you lost anything by me deleting all that. I have a ton of examples and guides in my README, so don't feel like you need to take notes or anything. It should all be there. And I'm also here. I should be around for the next like 6 or 7 hours if I could figure out how to use your guys' Slack and hop in. So, and you could also DM me on Twitter. So I'm here if you get stuck. You don't have to take notes or whatever. Okay, let's make a little chat app together. We have 5 minutes. Can we do it? I think it's just 5 minutes. So if someone knows differently, put in the chat like how much time I have left. But I'm assuming I have 5 minutes left. I think we can make a whole little chat app in 5 minutes if we are quick. All right, so the first thing we need is an input. I think input can be self-closing. Nice. And that's where the messages will go. And we want the messages to go above that. So here's where messages will go. Messages does not exist yet. Let's go ahead and make it. Okay, I'm going to call this CruzHacks messages. If you guys all type it in exactly how I typed it, you could talk to me. You know what? Here, I'll put it in the session chat. So if you want to join my chat, that's how you do it. The initial state is an empty array. Each message is just going to be a string in an array because we only have still 5 minutes left. I'm making good time. Set messages. All right. Cool. We're doing good. We're doing good. All right. So on key press, we are going to say, we're going to add the messages to the messages array. My React syntax right. How am I doing? Okay, cool. So we can destructure the event and grab out the key parameter. That'll be useful. And, ooh, why does it say 0? Initial state is 0? That's not right. Ooh, message. Here, let me do JSON.stringify messages. See what it really is. Huh, 0. That might be a bug from Code Sandbox or something else. I might have to change the name to get it to be a list of things. Here, I'm going to bump it to 1. See if it goes to an empty array like it should. No, empty array. Awesome. Cool. All right. So CruzHacks messages 1 is what you're going to need to type in. So just add a 1 to this if you want to join my message chat. Oh, you're actually going to need to have my URL. I'm going to need to like save this and log in and stuff. If you guys want to join my chat, I'll do that at the end. I don't have much time. Okay. Let me just put like a test message in here and bump this up to 2. So you guys can see, so I can start like rendering them. Messages.map div. So if it's loading, it'll be null or undefined. So you just have to do like, if it exists, then render them all. Oh, and I need a key value. Key equals I, where I is the index. So if I'm going to need an I, map should take M and I. All right. Does map, oh, do I have to say like map with index? Is that the name of the function? I don't know. I thought, oh, there we go. That should work. Cool. Map. The second thing map gives you is index. So I'm taking it here, passing it as the key. React needs that. If you never use React, sorry, React is annoying. 2 minutes left. You see the test message is already there. So I want to do set messages. It'll just be messages, comma. Ooh, you know what? I'm just gonna call this E. E dot if E dot key equals enter. I think that's how it's spelled with the E capital but nothing else capital. Then E dot target dot value. All right. Save. Refresh the page. Why does that say 0? Ooh, messages is not iterable. Ooh, okay. Hoping that the code sandbox bug, if you run into a code sandbox bug, refresh the page, bump the name of the name. Also, just don't use code sandbox. Like npm install this and use Visual Code. Okay, cool. We have a basic chat. 1 minute left. Why don't I go ahead and say e.target.value is reset. Now refresh the page. Now when I send a message, it resets the input. And there we go. We have a test. And if any of you were following along and, oh, no, sorry. None of you could follow along and participate in this because you don't have the URL. So anyways, there's a URL. Any of you can go in and add a message. We have 60 seconds left. While any of you, I'll leave that up if anyone wants to say a message of anything. And while you do, I'll just say thank you. Thanks for listening, watching, participating, giving Compose a try, even though it's like new software made by just me. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm a mentor. Message me for help. And I love giving advice to college students about startups or career. So please reach out, DM me. And that is, I think, all we have time for. I could be wrong about the ending time, but I think that's all we have time for. Thanks. All righty. I don't know if any moderator is going to come on and do anything. Oh, there we go.
Hey, yeah, thank you so much for hosting. This was super cool. If you have any links that you'd like to put out, you can send them over to me and I can post them on our general Slack channel so that it's like accessible to anybody that came to the workshop or, yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I mostly just want the people in the workshop to have this link, the link that I already sent in the beginning to the Notion. That link contains all the other links. So I think we're good. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good hackathon.